This is Gunners Are Us, where we are positively Patreon. And this here today is a review of the game at Everton and the preview to Palace in the Carabao Cup at the Emirates Stadium tomorrow night. This episode here is on the Patreon, but this one particularly is actually going to be on the main feed also. So this is a little preview if you're kind of a listener to Gunners Are Us. This is the kind of stuff you're going to get over on Patreon. We get reviews, previews, interviews, added episodes, any kind of breaking news will jump on. But just to give you like a sneak peek of what we're doing over on the Patreon. And if you're interested in that, the link below this audio here on iTunes, Spotify, give us a 5-star review, will be to the Patreon. Use the web browser as opposed to the app because you will avoid the taxes and things like that you have to pay monthly. Only just found that out, so just kind of keep that in your mind if you're looking to sign on to the Patreon. But probably 4 extra audios per week on top of the main feed with ad-free as far as the SeatGeek or whatnot or anything like that. So loads of perks, plus we're going to give away a graded Arsenal card once a month to Patreons only in some kind of raffle or something like that. So if you're interested, please go and click the link to the Patreon and sign up there. So anyway, what we need to talk about today is, like I said, it's a double parter, kind of like two, as opposed to doing 2 separate ones because of the quick turnaround of the Christmas fixtures. I think it's easier if we just join these two together and, maybe there'll be a kinship between the two to kind of give us more information about the other based on what we saw in the other. So we'll start here at the Hill Dickinson Stadium Saturday night, 8 o'clock. It was an interesting one. I think naturally we all were waiting for that team news to kind of I don't know if there was anything that we were particular. I think the commentators even said at one point it's good that they've got a few new players back for this game. I don't think anyone was back. I don't think there was any new, revelations or any injuries coming back or anything like that. I think it was kind of the squad that we've had the last couple games. But maybe because of that 7-day period, maybe it just felt kind of fresh. Saliba being back in the lineup, albeit he was in the one just before the 7-day break. And it's mad that we're even talking about a 7-day break, almost like as if we're talking about a Christmas break or anything. It's just a normal week. Just a normal week that most teams that aren't in Europe have week to week. But it's just interesting because it was our first 6-day break since, I think it was mid-August. So they could kind of regroup even, and kind of come up with some maybe solutions to the problems we were seeing at the home game with Wolves. But instead, we had the lineup. We had Raya Nkapia at that left centre-back instead of Gabriel, which I'm absolutely fine with. I've seen some dueling thoughts from Arsenal fans, some saying he's been poor, some thinking he's been unbelievable compared to what we thought maybe we were getting. But I mean, this is a guy who went unbeaten with Leverkusen and played a huge role in that. So I don't think he's not Mosquera, where he's, very young, very inexperienced, stuff like that. And he was and also bought a 13 million Mosquera, whereas Nkapia, even though it's a loan, it's going to be 60 million obligation to buy in the summer. So next year, part of that FFP and stuff is going to be Nkapia, and it is going to be 60 million. So at least this year, we're going to have an understanding of, is he worth 60 million? For a guy who essentially is supposed to be the backup to Gabriel. And I think maybe this year their plan was, if Gabriel or Saliba, more likely Gabriel maybe underperformed, maybe they'd look to move him on. There's been talk about Saudi and stuff like that in the past, and I wonder if they were thinking, could we get 60 million from Saudi for Gabriel, and then Nkapia, you bring him in, and then almost like the net spend is zero, and you've kind of replaced him. But the problem was Gabriel ended up starting probably the best he's ever started a Premier League season, but the injury has meant that we have got eyes on Nkapia, and I think that if you're looking at Gabriel being a 60 million pound player and Nkapia being a 60 million pound player, I think it's night and day. I think one is clearly a £100 million player and the other one might be a £30-40 million pound player. But I don't want to be too harsh on Nkapia. I think I've been impressed. I think just when you look at Mosquera for 13 million, there is better deals out there. But none of that to diminish. He's been unbelievable in the fact that he's filled in for Gabriel, and we've sustained the top of the league at Christmas. So huge shout out to Nkapia. But I think there's probably a deeper conversation we could have about the future of our centre-backs, or left centre-back potentially, because Saliba's signed on now. He's probably going to be the guy that's staying out of the two if they have to cash in, because FFP is going to catch up with us like it catches up with everyone. And we did spend big, and next summer already an obligation for another 60 million. So somewhere we're going to have to bring back some money, whether it be in January, whether it be in the summer. It will be interesting. But back into the lineup, left back was Calafiori. It looked like he had a knock, supposedly. I mean, he was suspended, but he did miss about 10 days of football there and didn't play in the Champions League. And supposedly there was a knock in there, but he was back into the starting lineup. Right back Timber, I'd say the best right back in the league this year, and he kind of back into his rightful position now. Saliba's back in, so we felt very good about that. Back five, because essentially it's just Hincapié for Gabriel, and then right ahead of him Zubamendi, Rice, Odegaard, and then up front was Gyökeres, who I'm glad I said that on the Patreon in the preview. They need to stick with him. We'll kind of do a deeper dive on Gyökeres in this game as well, because there's more conversation around him that I think is building again, like it was just before his injury. Right wing was Saka and left wing was Trossard. Trossard link up with Gyökeres is much better, and I think Trossard's been one of our best players this season. So now he's fit, I think he deserves that start. There is some conversation to have about squad depth, because when you look at what we used in this game, we used 3 substitutions over 3 windows. Unused subs, for example, Madueke scores a brace, a really good brace in the Champions League, and has been an unused sub for 2 Premier League games running since, hasn't played a minute of football. And I know he's going to start against Palace tomorrow, so I'm sure that was in the back of their minds. And Saka also dragged us to win against Wolves, and in this game was doing I'd say the majority of our chances came from that side. So maybe he was just thinking, I don't want to do that. And then he thought, maybe I'll bring Madueke out of position on the left. But Martinelli, he trusts more in a tight game because of the defensive nature and knowing him over 4 or 5, or potentially 6 years now. So I can see why he made the decisions he made. But I just have a slight issue with we now have depth and we're not necessarily using the depth. And when we get injuries, teams like players like Ben White and other players getting injured, you think, well, maybe if you'd given them time, that wouldn't have happened. So, it's all well and good when it's working and you're like, well, I made 3 changes, but we won and no one got injured. But it's a pile-on effect, isn't it? Like, because in 4 or 5 games' time, when, let's say, Saka pulls up or, Zubamendi, someone like that, you start to go, well, maybe there was games that we could have got at least 30 minutes out of their legs. And I think Zubamendi, they've actually managed quite well, even though he hasn't missed a game. He's been very good at kind of getting him off with 30 minutes to go. He's been a player that has been, and we always thought it was going to be Norgard. In games like that, I think at the start of the season, our image was Zubamendi up till 65. Tight game, 1-0 win, bring Norgard on to kind of close up shop and keep it nice and neat and tidy and not allow, more chances for the other team. So it was proof positive that isn't going to be the case this season. I mean, we're nearly halfway through. And he's never really used Norgard in that situation. I mean, he does not trust that player, I don't think. I mean, we're looking similarly to what Saka and Sterling were last year. When Saka was injured, he was bypassing Sterling to Waneri because he just didn't trust him, even though he's an older, more experienced player that you bring in for that exact reason. And I think it's happening now with Zubamendi and Rice. When Zubamendi can't play, he just goes, Rice, could you do another 90 minutes? And could you drop into a different position? And if it's not him, then it might be Norgard, because we haven't really got to a position where Zubamendi and Rice couldn't play. But I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't try Moreno or someone even deeper, or push a centre-back like a Timber or someone into that role, or a Lewis Skelly or someone. So I just don't think he trusts him, which means that the value of that, with Sterling, it was a loan deal that Chelsea were covering a majority of it. With this one, it's a purchase and a full, weekly sum. And he's done a job in the Champions League coming in the centre-back, things like that. But I feel like he's got to be pushed to such a depth. Like, he's almost like the deepest of the depth. We have to get to that point before he goes, all right, let's give Norgard a game. And I don't think that's right. And again, he should be playing against Palace tomorrow. I mean, this is a guy who captained Brentford. Brentford were beating teams like Palace last year. And he was in that role in a lesser team with lesser players around him. So there's no reason not to trust him. Do I think we'll play as well? No. Zubamendi really kind of, you talk about his announcement video and the tempo he sets. Like, I think Zubamendi's probably our most important player this year, along with Gabriel, Trossard, Rice. I would say they're kind of the ones that, and Timber obviously, have been our best players. So it's tough to remove that player ever, but at some point he's going to need to. And I think tomorrow night is one that he's going to need to. But as for the Everton game, it felt closer to what we were doing pre the weird run we've gone on since Sunderland away. I mean, we've got The last 3 away games have been a loss, a draw, and a draw. So we've got 2 points from a possible 9. That is Sunderland away, the 2-2 with the late goal, Villa with the loss where we conceded that late goal from Buendia, and in the middle there was the Chelsea game where we were very poor. And dare I say, I think the worst games we've played this year have been Chelsea away, maybe Villa away, and the home game to Wolves the other week. It's all kind of come in a bunch. Have we reached our level and maybe players are kind of fatiguing and this is the start of the decline towards the end of the season? I don't know. Is it just a rough patch? Because when you look at teams that win the league or do extremely well in the Premier League, I'm sure you can pinpoint an area that got a little rough. Like if that rough patch continues into January and February, it's not a patch. It's just a slow decline, like I was saying. But if they kind of now come back, we've won against Everton. If we could beat Brighton, and there's Villa, I think there's Liverpool, there's a Portsmouth FA Cup game. You get through all this kind of the next 6, and majority of them are wins. I don't think people will look back at it as, do you remember that sticky phase just before Christmas or kind of early December? And it's just something we had to navigate and still stay top. And at the minute we are. So time will tell what this little area is. And again, it hasn't helped. Other teams are going to say this excuse. But missing players going into those games and, Gabriel being missing, Saliba being missing. We had an almost completely changed back four for 3 or 4 of those games. And the thing that we were kind of resting our hat on previous to this spell in early December was our defensive nature and how good we were defensively. The energy from Gabriel upwards, Saka being unreal, Rice being unreal, Zubimendi creating a lot of chances, Eza being unbelievable. And I feel like we've got into this weird stage where defensively we've got less of the players that were doing so well. We're conceding more. We're not creating quite as many chances as we were before. Players like Eza aren't in the team as much. Madueke's not in the team as much. We've gone back to Odegaard. We've gone back to Moreno up front. It's kind of started to smell a little bit like last year. And in the last 2 games, we've kind of turned that corner to go back towards where we were at the start of the season. Gyökeres coming back in. I'd like to see Eza come back in 100%. There's a lot of discussion about Odegaard, but there just needs to be a more directness, and also as there's talk that Gabriel might be fit for Brighton. There's a little rumour out there. To see that, I think would kind of come with I think that'd be like a boost for the team that might take them through the rest of this winter period with some more wins. But this was more of a throwback to what we've been doing this season, where it was very kind of, we nullified the game. There wasn't really any chances. It didn't feel like Everton were ever going to get a chance. We weren't really overly creating. That was the only downside. Where against Wolves, they had a good chance, and then we created nothing. That was the kind of issue. They had probably the best chance of the first half, and we weren't ever fully in control. Whereas this one, I felt like we were in full control. And then O'Brien does a really bizarre thing and goes up with 2 hands and just basically parries the ball like a goalkeeper. And weirdly, only Calafiori is the only one that kind of asked for that penalty. But VAR check it, it's a clear penalty. And then we're just kind of sitting there thinking, is it going to be Saka, is it going to be Gyökeres? And it's Gyökeres. And I think that is important because earlier in the season, I think there was a couple of times where we hoped it would be Gyökeres and it was Saka. And we were kind of going, okay, maybe Saka is the penalty taker, whereas Gyökeres, even though I think he scored, 17 of his last 17 for Sporting before he came to Arsenal. He's a very good penalty taker. But there is conversations being had around him, so this could easily pile on if he were to miss it. But he steps up, he has kind of takes the net out of the goal a little bit, kind of lifts the back of the stanchion bit behind the goal. Just right down the middle, no questions asked. We get the celebration and we go 1-0 up into the half. And all we're thinking there is we've all got Wolves in our head, I think, of don't drop down, don't sit back, don't fall into your own box and just kind of go into this low block with no pressure on the ball and start panicking. And I think the early indications of that second half was what we've been doing all season, which is we start the second half very well. The first 20 minutes of the second half are the best we play the whole game. In this time, we have one cleared off the line from Saka where Timber pulls it back. He should have hit it across goal because Gyökeres has an easy tap in, which will explain how that kind of feeds into my notion that he still isn't getting the service no matter what anyone says. I think Trossard, unbelievable bit of play, which kind of gets released down the left, where Trossard bends it, hits the post. Zubimendi has a really nice shot from the edge of the box that hits the post. And I think in any other game, two of the three of those go in. It's 3-0. The game's dead, and we go, okay, we're back into the moment. But instead, none of them go in. It hits 70, 75 minutes, and you start to go, this is Wolves. Gyökeres goes off for Jesus, which was a similar indicator for when we started to drop off in that one. And it was about 2 or 3 minutes where the crowd got up. They didn't necessarily create anything, but they were definitely on the ball a bit, and we were sitting back, and I thought, this is got bad news written all over it. But then shortly after that spell, from about 78 minutes on, that was as good as making sure a game ends 1-0 and being in control of it that I've seen. I mean, I talked about the Wolves game being what champions don't do is play like that ever. You know, even if you're seeing out a game. The way we handled this one is exactly how champions do it. You've seen Man City do it. When you're watching as a, not necessarily a neutral, but a rival, you watch Man City in games like this at places like Everton. They're 1-0 up. And you can go, oh, they've kind of decided they're not going to score anymore, but they're just going to see the game out. And you think, come on, Everton, you could get one more chance. You know, come on. Let's take some points off of them. And Man City give them nothing. They keep the ball. There's nothing really troublesome happens. There's no real panic. It's just kind of a slow death by 1,000 passes, essentially. And we did that on this one. I mean, the stat line from 78 onwards is they completed 21 passes to our 89. We had 82% possession, and they had created no big chances. That's exactly how you want to see out. I think 78 minutes, and then there was 6 minutes added on, so 18 minutes of football at a stadium in which they, for whatever reason, lifted a tifo and did a fireworks display. For whatever reason, Arsenal keep getting this treatment when we go places. You know, you look at Wolves have Man United at their home, and they just kind of turn into a basketball game and see who wins, and Man United win 4-1. They turn up prime AC Milan from 93 against us at the Emirates. It's just interesting. And again, big teams get that kind of process, but then when you look at City with West Ham and stuff like that, there's no real intention. You know, there's no tifos being pulled up. You know, they're kind of just accepting it. Whereas with us, there's an element of, can we get a big scalp here? And that is very strange. It's very frustrating as well. But there was no big scalp. We only made 3 changes, which was Moreno came for Odegaard near the end, which doesn't feel great. You kind of want Ezra to kind of keep that kind of counter-attack or ball possession alive, but Moreno does a great job at kind of keeping the ball and just kind of working it around. I think him, Jesus, Calafiori, that left side was so good near the end, Rice, where they were just keeping that ball. And, it's so beneficial when teams, you're not kind of panicking. And I don't think Odegaard helps it, because he does that thing where he's very close to a tackle, doesn't make the tackle, and then when the ball gets passed on to the next level, he kind of waves his hands around like to get energy into the team, but it kind of comes across like a panic. And I think that translates to the crowd and to the players. And I saw a lot of that in this game again, and kind of those kind of moments where we could have been 3-on-3 if Odegaard just turns, but instead he does that big swooping action, kind of 5-meter semicircle back towards his own goal, just to kind of have a look at the full field. And in that 5 seconds, Everton will get behind the ball, and he's kind of now looking at two banks of 5 essentially. And you're thinking, well, if you just shimmied or just turned immediately, it would have been 3-on-3. And you think of that big chance for Gyökeres in the first half, where Odegaard, all he has to do is slide him in, just a vertical pass, no angle on it, just a vertical pass, weighted, and Gyökeres is running on with his right foot across goal, and instead he hits it kind of at like a 45-degree angle, way past Gyökeres. He has to go wide, he has to cross it, and you think, this is the moments in which, for me, as an ex-forward, when I watch Gyökeres, I feel frustrated for him, because people are now saying he is getting the service, because people are just literally highlighting that one pass that Rice did at Aston Villa, which was 10 feet ahead of him, and he didn't get to it, and they were saying he should have been on the last man. But, I mean, I've watched Arsenal for a very long time. In 10 years, I don't think I've seen us do a first-time ball across the box like that. So I can't imagine he expected it. And other than that, there's like that one. And then you think of like Timber in this one. He could have just knocked it across for a tap-in. It would have been a brace for Gyökeres, less talk about him. Instead, they cut it back to Saka, and then he has to hit through 3 or 4 players, including the goalie. In that first half, Odegaard, all he has to line him in, And if you watch him throughout a whole game, he makes 20, 30 runs. And he's pointing, and we could play the ball. and it might not go anywhere. It might end up him in the channel, but at least we progress the ball forward. He can then, Sporting, he would end up in that channel a lot, and then kind of get turned, look at the goal, and then kind of hit it across goal and get a lot of assists that way. But instead, they look at him, he makes the run, and then they kind of stop, put their hand up, and say, no, not that one. But the problem is then they keep the ball for another 30 seconds. And then eventually, one of our centre backs just goes long to him when he's got two people on him. They win the ball, and everyone goes, oh, his hold-up play is rough. It's like, well, if you're willing to give the ball away so simply, why not have one of your more aggressive attacking players that are real creative release that ball for him? And if that goes nowhere, fine. As opposed to keeping the ball for another minute and then just having a centre-back lump it to him. And it happens constantly. And you can see him getting frustrated because you're thinking, just play me in. You some of them might end up in the channel. Some of them might go out for a throw or a goal kick. Some of them might end up in goals. Some of them might end up in shots on target, corners, all sorts. They need to release him more often. If you watched Eze when he played with Mateta, or even City now with Haaland, they almost always play the ball because they're like, something will happen. And it also keeps that defence kind of staggered because they're never sure. Whereas, I mean, if you're playing with Arsenal, you're eventually going to go, do you know what? I don't need to track his run because they're never going to play him. So he gets his goal for the penalty. That's great. Naturally, he got man of the match as well. But naturally, everyone's going to kind of say, I say he got man of the match. Saka got man of the match. The player of the match was him from the Arsenal website. But he goes off for Jesus, and Jesus does a really good job at holding the ball up. He is going to get involved in the game, but he's going to vacate the area in which he's supposed to be constantly, which is fine because it's a different style of playing. It's a lot of fun. But that way that ball sticks to him. He has almost like a little boxing fight with the defender every time, but he seems to come away with it. So I don't mind the idea of kind of Gyökeres taking up 60 minutes and then later on in the game when you need that ball to stick, Jesus is doing that. Or even the other way around. And, early in the game when you need more players involved, have Jesus get it, bring players into the game, get a couple goals, and then bring on Gyökeres against a tired team and allow your players to actually release him as opposed to going back and around and doing some circles around him before they pass it. But that's my theory on that. I think he's very frustrated, and I feel like us not playing with a real centre-forward since Aubameyang maybe 6 years ago. The current team haven't played with a real centre-forward who's making those runs. We have players that come and drop deep and sit next to you. And that was my other issue with Odegaard in this game, was he was between Rice and Zubimendi and the centre-backs at times. And you're thinking, how are we going to progress that? And sometimes people say Ez is not involved in the game. It's because he stays in that correct 10 position and allows Zubimendi and Rice to actually do their job and give him the ball in those dangerous pockets, as opposed to Odegaard dropping right in there, working his way up, waving his arms to say, someone drop into that gap. So, well, that's where you're supposed to be. So I don't know if maybe the future of Odegaard is actually deeper. Because why not? He's not as physical as some sixes. But I think him and Zubimendi kind of match up quite nicely as their passing range. I think Zubimendi's much better, obviously, in the air and in the tackle, which is why he's a 6. But I wonder if Odegaard, like Arteta, will drop deeper as his kind of career goes on. And maybe he becomes one of the rotations of the 6/left 8s. Or right 8s, like a deeper 8, and Ez is the high 10 on the left side over time. And he ends up staying here a lot longer, but he's not necessarily the pinnacle of the number 10, and therefore it gives Waneri more chances to be in that crew with Eze. With Eze kind of in the next couple of years hitting 30, Waneri would be primed at 21, 22 to be, 20, to be that number 10 for 10 years, So time will tell, but that's how I felt. And I think at the end I was kind of more impressed with the way in which we dealt with the game. We were very lucky with them missing a lot of big players, so it had to be a win. And with City winning in the day comfortably against West Ham 3-0, we were not top for the first time in a very long time, so we needed to re-establish that 2-point lead. We did it. And that kind of gets us ready for, I think it's Brighton on Saturday, the day after Boxing Day. Only one game on Boxing Day this year. But the big game is tomorrow in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals against Crystal Palace at the Emirates. There's a big conversation being had at the minute with Arsenal fans of, some Arsenal fans are in the mindset of, let's bin off the Carabao Cup and not think about it. Others, and this is the side I'm on, is you need to just try and win every game you're in and don't worry about, but that's fixture build up. And, I know people are worried about it because if you go maybe one or two more games in the FA Cup, you go to the semi-final in this, it pushes a couple game in hands. If you think of Liverpool a couple of years ago, they were kind of, when they went the distance and everything, a lot of games kept getting pushed up And so they were always like 6 points behind the lead, but they had like 3 games in hand. So you never truly knew if they were going to breeze the league or they were just behind. We could end up in that situation, and therefore with City, it's not necessarily ideal. But the problem with that, not the problem with that, the thing with that is City are also in there. So they're going to be dealing with the same fixture build-up. So the team that we're in a title race with are probably going to have fixtures moved just like us. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that. And the extra games, I mean, go out now or go to the final. It's 3 extra games. But I mean, we could go out the FA Cup. We could go out the Champions League. We're still going to end up playing 60 games, So for me, you've got to try and win every game. And especially when you look at, I think, if we beat Palace, we have Chelsea, and our second leg is at home, which is a huge difference. Obviously, last year we had Newcastle, who were super up for it and ended up winning the Cup. And they had the away game second. They went 2-0 at us, 2-0 at home. And it was that game probably ended our season as well, which is, I think, also the worry of some Arsenal fans, because we had some injuries. I think Havertz got injured that week, Gabriel got injured that week, Martinelli got injured in the game, and we never really recovered our season after that game. But the game was already gone. It was 2-0 in the first leg. Whereas this one, if we can go to Chelsea, who will be without Caicedo in that first one, and get a 0-0 or 1-0 or 1-1 or whatever it is, I fancy us in that second leg to get that win at home and get to a final. And that final could be against Newcastle, it could be against City. I kind of fancy Newcastle to make it. And they aren't the team of last year. Could they win back-to-backs? Yeah. But I just think there's a nice route, but I really think the first step is just getting past Palace. But for me, I think you've got to try and win everything. I think Yankee Guna was talking about the fact that right now, if we ended the season second but won the Carabao Cup, or if we won the league but went out here at the Carabao Cup, what one would you prefer? And I think we all agree on the one we would prefer. But I don't think you can think like that. I think that's kind of, we could also go out here and then come second. And then I'd be going, I wish we had taken that serious. Last year I felt that way. The way the season ended, I was like, why didn't we take that Carabao Cup way more seriously? Why couldn't we, get a final with the way the Champions League ended in the semi and the league kind of just fizzling out, the FA Cup being disappointment, losing to Man United in a game we deserved to win. At the end of the year, I was thinking, it would have been nice actually to come second and win the Carabao. So I think that's what makes me think, go for it. Crystal Palace have to play every 2 days at the minute, which is awful. I don't know how they've got away with that. But they won in Europe, but then they had a horrible 4-1 loss to Leeds at Leeds. And they did have a lot of their players playing, but also some rested. They look really fatigued. So if we can get in there with a rotated team, and starting with that, I think if we look at the team we put out, I think if we start at the top, I think you start with maybe Martinelli, Martinelli and Madueke either side of Jesus, I would say. Give them that start. That is a kind of aggressive, forward-thinking front three. I think Eza has to play. That's when it gets a bit dicey. I think it'll be Moreno. You could go full rotation and go Moreno and then Norgard. But you do start to... And I think that team is definitely good enough to beat the current Palace team that are kind of in a haze of just playing every 2 days. But you do also go... I don't know. I think that team could get 60 minutes at 0-0 maybe. And then you have to bring on the big boys. And you think, could you not start the big boys, got the game away from them, and then rotated? But I'll tell you, pretty much is always stuck to the process of he'll rotate a little bit, but majority that's going to be a strong team. So that front three I mentioned, one of them will be a player that we don't expect to be those, whether it be Gyökeres or Saka, but Madueke deserves to start. The midfield, other than Zubamendi, maybe he plays Zubamendi and he plays it with Moreno and Eza, but I don't know who's in more need of a rest in Rice or Zubamendi. I know they had to rest midweek in the Champions League, and they've just come off a 7-dayer. So there's a chance that Arteta will see that as, well, you just had 7 days off. Maybe you play 3 times this week. But it does feel like the time to rotate. Maybe one of them minimum, even as Zubamendi and Rice goes into the 6, and then you take maybe Rice off of Zubamendi at 50, 60 minutes, half time even. But it does feel like Norgard should be used in this one. It's tough. That's why I'm not a manager, but I wouldn't go, if there was 100% rotation, I'd go at maybe 60%. I'd leave a couple in there. Maybe it'd be Eza, Rice, Norgard, or Zubimendi, Moreno, Eza. Something, one of them needs to stay. And then at the back, I think it's tougher because I think there isn't many players. I think Raya, I think Kepa actually might play. Right back, Ben White's not fit now, so it's tough. If you keep the majority of the team together, I would be tempted to play Salmon at right back. And then you play Saliba with Hincapi and then Lewis Skelly. Or you play Calafiori left centre-back and have Hincapi have a rest because he's played a lot of football. But there's ways in which we could rotate. It just really depends because if you rotate too much, it's good to have that depth. But when you rotate a full team, usually bad things happen. So they're going to have to keep somewhat of a connection, whether it is just Timber and Saliba, Calafiori left centre-back, Lewis Skelly. And you kind of go, that's a very good back four. Maybe you leave Rice in the middle, but you have Norgard as the 6. Eza comes in for Odegaard, which I think we all feel is like for like. And then that front three that I mentioned earlier, Jesus, Madueke and Martinelli, I think that's just aggressive, forward-thinking, very greedy front three, and you just leave it for Saka and Gyökeres to come on late, or Trossard to try and kind of come up with something. Maybe you bring on Zubimendi for Norgard, Moreno for Rice. It's kind of so you always have at least one of Rice or Zubimendi on. Maybe that's what you do. It is a tough one, but for me, I think the big conversation is around just how seriously you take it. And for me, you take it serious. It's a cup. It's so close to the final. I do fancy us over 2 legs against Chelsea. So, do you know what I mean? Why not? That's my opinion. Other people have very strong opinions the other way. But when you look at the league, I'm just going to kind of have a quick look through the league table. And when you look at it currently, I mean, we're 2 points clear. But Villa, I think that's 10 games in a row, is it? In all comps? Wins. And that for a team that didn't win in 6 and didn't score in 5. Unbelievable turnaround because the next 10 games after that dodgy 6-game start, they've essentially just won it in a row. And that's pretty much put them at 36 points. And we're on 39, City at 37. And they've now got a 7-point cushion actually on Chelsea in 4th. And Liverpool, after winning, are actually hiding there in 5th. Liverpool level points with Chelsea in 5th in the Champions League spots. Sunderland 2 points off of that. Man United 1 point off of that. Crystal Palace level with Man United. So when you actually do look, I think as well, Man United and Sunderland in that next gap down, they are looking at missing a lot of players through AFCON. I think Man United and Sunderland could drop a couple points here, which could open up that gap between 5th and 6th to kind of establish that top 5 this year as maybe Liverpool, Chelsea, Villa, City and Arsenal. When you look at the goal difference, City are 4 ahead of Arsenal, but no one's really close to either of those two teams. We're on 21, they're on 25. The next best is Chelsea with 12. But 2 points clear of City. I think that the perception is that they're chasing us down and they're probably going to catch us. But when you do look at the fixtures, if we can kind of stay steady and get some players back, well, not some players. We have Gabriel is out. Havertz is out. Ben White's out. We're very close now, but to full fitness. If we can get that full fit team for that second half, when you're starting into the dangerous parts of the Champions League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, the Premier League, plus we're not going away to a lot of the big teams. We only need to go away to City. But we've been away to Villa, been away to Chelsea, been away to Liverpool, been away to Sunderland, been away to Man United, been away to Everton, been away to Newcastle. It is, really the games that we're looking at are Spurs and Man City, the 2 away games that are very unnerving. A lot of the other teams have got to come to the Emirates, get that energy up, get that tifo out. Fully fit team and kind of blow some teams away. But this Christmas period generally is going to be kind of an interesting moment. We got Monday Night Football tonight, which is Fulham and Forest, not necessarily anything to do with us. But looking at quickly at Liverpool as well. Isaac looks like it's a lower leg break, I believe, which that tied in with Salah now being away for AFCON, and God knows if he's playing again afterwards. That front three is, Etitike I think has been unbelievable, but I think now it's going to have to be Chiesa and Gakpo. it's getting very short, and I think that will come up and kind of they will struggle to keep any kind of consistency with the lack of depth they have there. Friday on Boxing Day, we've got Man United and Newcastle. Saturday, there's football day. Man City away to Forest early doors. Could Forest and Deitch do a job of kind of just a 0-0 or a 1-1? We're at 3 o'clock home to Brighton. Hopefully that's quiet. Then a big game here after that is 5:30 on Saturday is Chelsea Villa. Big implications for the third and fourth spot. If we were to get a win that weekend, City were to draw, they were to draw, all of a sudden we could extend that lead going into the games that are coming up shortly after that, after that we're playing midweek again on the Tuesday, and that'll be home to Aston Villa at 8:15, which is such a big game. But again, could extend that lead because that same weekend, Man City are away to Sunderland, but without a lot of their players. So by January 1st, so much could change, but I think it's just about doing our personal job of winning the games ahead of us, including a Carabao Cup fixture against Crystal Palace tomorrow night. So this has been our Patreon episode. We've reviewed the Everton game. We previewed the Crystal Palace game. This is the kind of stuff you get here on the Patreon. If you're listening to this on iTunes and Spotify and you're a regular listener, please consider signing up for our Patreon. Click the link below this and I'll take you there and you can see what fees are involved, whatever. And like I said, probably 3 to 4 extra audios a week, especially with how quick the fixtures are coming now. And giving away a graded card once a month to a listener on the Patreon. So loads of cool little perks and things like that. Please head over. Please tell your friends about it. Please download the podcast. And if you're just going to listen to us on a Wednesday, enjoy those every single Wednesday on iTunes and Spotify. But this has been Gunners R Us. Check us out on TikTok. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.